At my mother-in-law's 70th birthday dinner in Rome, everything was flawlessly arranged except for one thing. There was no seat for me. I stood at the lavish table surrounded by designer dresses, heirloom jewelry, and 12 carefully counted name cards. My husband let out a soft chuckle. "Oops," he said. Guess we miscounted. Laughter rippled around the table like I was just a harmless oversight. But I didn't cry, I didn't shout. I simply smiled, lifted my chin and said, "Seems I'm not family." Then I turned and walked away. What they didn't know was that I had already planned for this. 30 minutes later, their perfect dinner turned into chaos. No champagne, no main course, no yacht, no one to bail them out. I wasn't asking for a chair. I was reclaiming the entire table. Have you ever been pushed aside by the very people who claim to love you? Comment, I've been Isabelle. If you support her, vote number 1. What would you have done? And don't forget to subscribe to Sophia's Revenge Stories for more sharp, bold, and deliciously smart stories of karma and comeback every single day. My name is Isabelle Carter. 5 years ago, I was simply the founder of Velvet Compass, a boutique event planning firm I built from scratch in Seattle. Weddings, galas, product launches, fundraisers. If it required flawless execution, my team delivered. People say event planners are born from chaos. They're right. I put myself through business school, waiting tables at luxury hotels, memorizing how power moved in a room. By the time I was 30, my name was quietly circulating among the Northwest elite. Not loud, just undeniable. That's how I met Nathaniel Langford, at a fundraising gala for pediatric oncology, which I orchestrated down to the millisecond. He was charming, polite, perfectly tailored, and more importantly, he seemed genuinely curious about me, not just the product I'd delivered. My mother's throwing a foundation ball next month, he said, eyeing the cascading florals I had suspended above the bar. She's going to want your number. That should have been the first warning sign, but I was too busy falling. One job led to another. Soon I was the unofficial official planner for the Langfords, old money royalty from Boston. Shipping steel, private equity, you name it. The Langfords didn't flaunt their wealth. They let the Polish do the talking, silk-lined interiors, understated cufflinks, that kind of power. Nathaniel and I started dating 6 months later, and I'll admit he made it easy to forget who his family really was. At first, his mother, Vivian Langford, treated me like a necessary transaction. I was efficient, discreet, talented, yes, but still ordinary. Self-made, she said once at dinner, patting my hand as if she were congratulating a valet. How very American. It wasn't even cruel. It was clinical. She didn't hate me, she just didn't believe I belonged. But Nathaniel, he was different, open-minded, attentive. At least that's what I told myself when he proposed 11 months after our first kiss. The wedding was a spectacle, part royal affair, part brand statement. Naturally, I couldn't trust anyone else to plan it. I managed every detail myself, down to the floral monogram pressed into the cake's second tier. Vivienne fought me on everything. The venue wasn't classic enough. The menu lacked continental restraint. She even rewrote our guest list, adding socialites I'd never met and couldn't stand. But I bent. I compromised. I told myself this was what love meant, negotiating your place in someone else's dynasty. After the wedding, things didn't improve. They got subtler, sharper. At family gatherings, they'd ask my opinion, then talk over me if I suggested a change to a table setting. Vivienne would smile sweetly and say, "Well, dear, you always have such quirky little ideas." Nathaniel never defended me. He'd laugh it off later in the car. You know how my mother is. Don't take it personally, but it was personal every single time, still. I smiled, still I gave, because that's what I was taught success looked like. So when Vivienne asked me to plan her 70th birthday, I didn't hesitate. Not even for a second. A week-long celebration in Rome, private vineyard tours, a Michelin-starred dinner overlooking the Colosseum, yachts, villas, exclusive guides. It would be the greatest event I'd ever planned, and it would be for the woman who had spent years reminding me I didn't belong. I threw myself into the work. I made the calls, called in favors, secured venues others had wait lists for. I even floated the deposits on my company's credit line when their bank transfers began arriving late. Because that's how much I still believed somewhere deep down that if I proved my worth enough times, they'd finally stop looking through me. I didn't realize until it was too late that the event I was building wasn't just a birthday party. It was a stage A, very polished, very public stage for my execution. And I was building it with my own hands. The morning we flew to Rome, Nathaniel's phone buzzed as he stepped into the shower. Normally I wouldn't have looked, but that morning, something felt off. The air between us had shifted. And then I saw it, a message from a contact named, simply, C, can't wait to see you in Rome. Have you told her yet? The preview alone cracked something in me. My fingers moved before I could stop them. The thread was long, intimate, unmistakable. Clara Prescott, the woman Nathaniel dated in college, the one his family still invited to holiday dinners even after we were married. They had been seeing each other for months, and she was pregnant. Due in 4, I stared at the screen. My reflection in the black glass was pale but calm. I took screenshots, emailed them to myself, then erased every trace from his phone. By the time he stepped out of the shower, I had already repacked my bag, reapplied lipstick, and put on my smile. We boarded the plane like nothing was wrong. Vivian greeted me with faux warmth at the airport, the rest of the family. Nathaniel's sister Victoria, his brother Miles, their spouses, 2 uncles, 1 aunt. All smiled like we were one big happy dynasty. And I played my part, gracious daughter-in-law, efficient planner, quiet observer. The luxury vans I'd arranged picked us up, but Vivian sneered at the vehicles. These look generic. I requested hotel sedans. I explained calmly. They're from Lux Transport. They handle diplomatic transport in Rome. I upgraded us. She turned away mid-sentence, already whispering to her husband. We arrived at Hotel de Russie, 5-star suites I'd booked months in advance. Bespoke gift baskets, personalized itineraries, fresh florals in every room. Vivian glanced at her schedule, then waved it away. We'll just play it by ear, she said. 3 months of meticulous planning dismissed in 5 words. That night at the welcome dinner, they changed the seating last minute. I was placed at the far end of the table, wedged between a cousin I barely knew and an uncle who kept checking his watch. Nathaniel across the table, laughing with Clara's godparents. Yes, she was in Rome too. Coincidentally, over the next few days the pattern was clear. Family breakfasts without me, private tours without me. Impromptu dinners planned in whispers I was never meant to hear. I'd ask Nathaniel where he'd gone. Oh, I thought you were resting. He'd say I didn't want to disturb your work. His work apparently was rewriting our marriage with the help of his family's attorney. On the 3rd morning he left in a rush, forgot his briefcase. I opened it inside draft separation papers, prepared 2 months earlier, and worse, a printed script, outlining exactly how Nathaniel would announce our amicable split during Vivian's birthday dinner. He was going to make a show of it, so elegant, so civilized, and I would be expected to smile through it for the sake of optics. I sat on the hotel bed, documents in my lap, heart pounding but face dry. Not a single tear, instead a single word rose in my mind. Enough they didn't just want to erase me, they wanted me to thank them for it, but I wasn't going quietly. I had spent 5 years keeping their secrets, managing their reputations, absorbing their slights. Now I was going to manage their downfall, with the same precision I brought to every event. That afternoon I returned to the suite early, made phone calls, accessed my business accounts, started retrieving deposits and adjusting reservations behind the scenes. I had always planned contingencies, cancellation, clauses, reversals, vendor loyalty. This time I would use them for myself. I wasn't just documenting betrayal, I was building a trigger. A calm, deliberate, undetectable fuse. They wouldn't realize I'd lit until it was far too late. The morning of Vivian's birthday dawned clear and golden, the kind of Roman light that makes everything look like it belongs in a painting. It was the day everything was supposed to culminate. The vineyard lunch, the private Borghese tour, the rooftop dinner, the full Langford production. I woke up before Nathaniel slipped out of bed and into action. Downstairs, I headed to the hotel business center to print final confirmations for the evening. That's when I heard it. Vivian's voice sharp and unmistakable, just beyond the thin partition of the concierge wall. There will be 12 seats, not 13, she told the restaurant manager. I don't care what the original reservation says. My son and I have discussed this. His wife won't be staying for dinner. It's a private family matter. I stood completely still. The papers in my hands suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds. That was it. The final proof. The missing seat wasn't an error, it was the centerpiece of their plan. They didn't just want me gone, they wanted me to vanish in silence. They wanted me to humiliate myself to make it my choice to leave so they could claim innocence. I walked calmly to the elevator, closed the door, and pulled out my phone. If they wanted to erase me, they'd get something unforgettable. Instead, I called the restaurant manager, Marco. He'd worked with me before. Trusted me, I sent him an email with the final payment withdrawal. Attached my authority as the event account holder. Confirmed that no costs were to be billed forward. Everything, every flower, every fork, every flute of champagne was to be halted unless the Langfords provided new payment up front. Then came the calls to the yacht company, the Amalfi Villa, the Vatican tour guide, the vineyard chef. I canceled it all, each transaction reversed. Each deposit pulled back to my business account. I left no trace. 30 minutes later, I returned to the suite where Nathaniel was adjusting his cufflinks. "You ready?" he asked, not even looking up. "Oh, I'm more than ready," I said. We took the van with the rest of the family. Vivian in her pearls, Richard looking half bored, Miles and Victoria whispering, smirking. The rooftop at Aroma looked stunning. I had arranged every detail, white peonies, hand-lettered place cards, a view of the Colosseum framed by flickering candlelight. I inspected everything one last time. Marco nodded at me. Perfect as always, I smiled. It would be the last time I ever said that to him on behalf of the Langfords. Back at the hotel, I slipped into my midnight blue gown, a Valentino original I'd saved for this night. I applied my makeup slowly, calmly watching myself in the mirror. No anger, no panic, just clarity. The Langfords had used me for my skills, my connections, my silence. And tonight they would finally learn what it cost to cross someone who had mastered the art of the controlled collapse. I joined the family in the lobby. They didn't even flinch when I walked in. Just smiled, as if I hadn't seen the script, as if I hadn't read the messages, as if I hadn't heard Vivian order my erasure with casual elegance that morning. We rode the elevator up together. Nathaniel placed a performative hand on my back. For show. The doors opened to candlelight, a rooftop bathed in gold, and the table round grand, elegant, 12 seats. Everyone moved into position. I stood there for a moment searching for mine. There wasn't one. Not even a place card. No one said a word, they just smiled, adjusted silverware, and began to sip champagne. I waited, let the moment breathe. Then I looked at them, at each of them, one by one. Vivian, eyes triumphant. Richard, uncomfortable. Miles and Victoria. Amused Nathaniel. Detached, and I spoke. "Seems I'm not family." I let the words hang there crystal clear in the Roman night. No tears, no dramatics, just truth. I turned, walked away. No one stopped me because they thought it was over, but for me, it had only just begun. As the door to the rooftop closed behind me, I took a deep breath. I wasn't shaking. Not anymore. I crossed the cobblestone street and ducked into a small cafe with a view of the restaurant's terrace. Ordered a single espresso, sat down at a corner table, took out my phone, and went to work. 30 minutes. That's how long I estimated it would take for them to notice something was wrong, to realize the dinner wasn't fully paid for, that the yacht for tomorrow wouldn't arrive, that the villa in Tuscany had been unbooked. I had built the week's events from the ground up, and I would dismantle them just as quickly, with precision, with purpose. First, I sent Marco, Aroma's restaurant manager, a final confirmation email event. Cancellation, confirmed deposits, reverse credit authorization, revoked as discussed. Then came the vineyard in Lazio. The chef had been excited to meet Vivian. "Too bad. Please release the afternoon lunch slot," I wrote. "The Langfords will not be attending." Next was the Vatican private tour. I had secured a licensed guide with off-hours access to the Sistine Chapel. Unexpected change, I messaged client canceled. Please refund per our contract. The yacht company gone. The villa in Tuscany canceled. The driver team reassigned. Every deposit had been secured on my corporate line. Every vendor worked with me, not them. And I made sure the money flowed right back into my company's account. Before the Langfords ever noticed, each message sent felt like peeling off another layer they had wrapped me in for years. By the time I finished my espresso, 28 minutes had passed. My phone buzzed. "Nathaniel. Where are you? Stop being childish, Nathaniel." You're embarrassing yourself. Come back. I smiled, typed nothing. They didn't know yet. But they were close. I paid my bill, walked calmly around the corner, and slipped into Aroma's service entrance, a route I'd mapped weeks earlier. Marco met me near the kitchen. Are you sure about this? He asked. His voice was low, discreet. Professional, I'm absolutely sure. I said. I handed him a sealed envelope. Inside, full documentation, proof of payment cancellations, a note releasing the restaurant from all financial guarantees tied to my company. If they want to continue, I said, they'll have to pay out of pocket, up front. Marco nodded, expression grim. When should I tell them? I glanced at my phone. One more message from Nathaniel. The hotel says, our reservation for tomorrow is gone. What are you doing? I smiled again. Give it 5 minutes, I told Marco. I'd like to watch. He led me to a small alcove near the back of the terrace. It offered a perfect view of the Langford family. Mid-toast, champagne flutes, raised. Vivienne glowing. Everyone basking in the delusion that I had simply walked away defeated. Marco approached the table with 2 other staff members. He leaned down and whispered something to Richard. The effect was immediate confusion. Then, alarmed, Richard reached for his wallet. Marco gently shook his head, showing him something on a tablet screen. Vivienne's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Nathaniel stared down at his phone face, slowly draining of color as my final message came through. All deposits have been refunded, all vendors canceled. Your family's financial crisis is now public. Enjoy the caviar. Richard rose, face red. Vivienne clutched her diamond necklace. Victoria gasped. Miles was already on the phone trying to call someone, anyone. Nathaniel stood phone to his ear, calling me. Now I let it ring once. Then picked up. His voice was a hiss. What the hell do you think you're doing? Seems I'm not family, I said. So I'm not responsible for family celebrations. You need to fix this, he barked. You're humiliating my mother, our family. I know, I said. That's the point. You don't understand what this will do to us. Oh, I do. I've seen the offshore accounts, the mortgage statements, the fake asset transfers. The entire empire is cracking. Nathaniel, and you plan to use me one last time before tossing me aside. He went silent. You can come back, he finally said. We can work this out. I'll explain everything, Clara. The baby, I'm sure you will, I said. To your lawyer, I hung up and stepped out of the shadows. As I stepped out of the alcove and onto the terrace, 12 heads turned in unison. Some were furious, some startled, others simply stunned. Vivienne was the first to speak. Her voice was sharp and trembling. How dare you ruin my birthday? I walked toward the table slowly. Each heel click echoing over the stunned silence. I stopped just short of my missing chair, smiled. I learned from the best, Vivienne. Isn't this exactly what you planned for me? A public humiliation, an orchestrated exit. She rose halfway from her seat as if to reclaim control of the narrative. The matriarch, the director, the star. But I kept speaking calmly, clearly, cutting through her performance with precision. The difference is this ending was mine to write. Richard stood now indignant. This is outrageous. You had no right. I had every right, I said, meeting his eyes. Every vendor, every contract, every reservation, they were all under my name. My company, my credit. He faltered, his mouth opening, then closing again. Victoria leaned across the table, sneering like a high school queen bee who'd lost her prom crown. You'll regret this. When Nathaniel divorces you, you'll walk away with nothing. I turned to Nathaniel, looked him directly in the eye. That's where you're wrong. I reached into my clutch, held up my phone. I have copies of everything. The offshore accounts, the concealed assets, the business dealings your family buried in shell companies and closed-door loans. And I promise, I added, the IRS would love to read them. Nathaniel went pale, truly pale, because he knew I wasn't bluffing. Behind him, the staff began clearing the table. The dinner was effectively over. Marco returned with a clipboard. Senora Langford, he said softly. We'll need another method of payment to continue. Vivienne blinked, then stared at Richard, then at Nathaniel. No one moved. In the end, it was Vivienne who removed her Bulgari bracelet and handed it over to Marco as collateral. The same bracelet she once bragged was a limited edition, only 5 in the world. Now it was a security deposit for a party she no longer controlled. I walked away again, but this time, I didn't look back. The next morning, I boarded a flight back to Seattle, upgraded to first class, using points I had earned booking their vacations. The irony didn't escape me. Back home, I moved out of the house on Queen Anne Hill, hired a lawyer, delivered all the documentation I had gathered, sealed, indexed, and time-stamped. If the Langfords tried to sue me, they would find themselves facing a very public reckoning. 2 days later, a small piece ran in the Boston Globe. Langford Investment Group faces financial review. Nothing scandalous yet, but enough to start the whispers. Nathaniel came to my apartment a week later. He looked exhausted, disheveled, smaller than I remembered. "You need to come home," he said. "This has gone too far." "This isn't a negotiation, Nathaniel," I told him. "This is a divorce." He stepped inside anyway, running his hands through his hair, voice thick with panic. "The SEC is investigating my father's holdings. 2 board members have resigned. Vivian had to cancel her charity gala. Donors pulled out. Sounds like a Langford problem." "I said it's your problem too," he snapped. "We're still married. My debts are your debts." I gave him a small smile. "Not when I have proof that you deliberately excluded me from financial decisions and hid assets to defraud me during divorce proceedings." He sat down hard, palmed his face. "I never meant for it to be like this," he mumbled. "No," I asked, sitting across from him. "You planned to announce our separation at your mother's party. Didn't even give me a seat at the table, but you loved me in the beginning." He said quietly, "I did. But things changed." "Clara." "When is the baby due?" I interrupted. He looked up, startled. "You knew 4 months, right? I read the text." He didn't answer, didn't have to. Outside, rain had started tapping gently on the window. Inside, silence stretched between us. "I'll give you anything you want," he finally said. "Just hand over the documents. Sign an NDA, name your price." And that was when I realized they still didn't understand me. After 5 years, they thought I wanted their money, their status, their name. They still thought I could be bought. "I don't want your money," I said. "I want my freedom." Nathaniel left my apartment that night without another word. Not angry, just defeated, like a man who realized too late that he had underestimated the quietest person in the room. Over the following weeks, the story unfolded quietly but persistently. The Boston Globe expanded its piece. Words like financial misrepresentation, breach of fiduciary trust, and pending SEC investigation began to appear in the same paragraphs as the once pristine Langford name. Clients started pulling out of their investment group. Donors withdrew from Vivian's charities. Even the exclusive women's club she chaired placed her status under review. Clara's pregnancy became public when she was photographed, leaving a clinic wearing a diamond ring and a maternity dress. The Langfords didn't just lose control of a narrative, they lost the illusion that had protected them. And me. My business thrived. Vendors I once rescued from last-minute Langford disasters began referring high-end clients my way. People remembered how calmly I handled betrayal, how I walked away without burning down the room, but left no illusions about what had happened inside it. 6 months later, I received an invitation. Vivian Langford asking if I was available to plan her upcoming charity auction. I stared at the envelope for a long time, then smiled and politely declined, citing a full calendar of clients who valued my time and respected my work. The divorce finalized without court drama. My lawyer ensured that every asset I'd rightfully earned remained untouched, and Nathaniel wisely didn't contest a thing. On the 1-year anniversary of that dinner in Rome, I stood on a terrace in Positano overlooking the Amalfi Coast, coordinating a celebrity wedding for a client who insisted I be seated next to the bride. As the sun dipped behind the cliffs, I raised a glass to peace, to clarity, to the empty chair that had once tried to define my place. And I thought they tried to erase me with silence, but I rewrote the story with power on my terms. Sometimes you don't need to flip the table. You just need to take back the seat they tried to pretend was never yours. What did you think of Isabelle's story? Have you ever been quietly excluded by the people closest to you? Drop a comment. Let me know where you're listening from. And if you stood with Isabelle, vote number 1. If you think Vivian got what she deserved, vote 13. And don't forget to subscribe to Sophia's Revenge Stories so you never miss a powerful new comeback tale every single day.